All right, how's it going, everybody? I wanted to put this little training video together for you because a lot of you have been asking, Blaine, how is it possible that I can drop my score and shave strokes off my game without having to change my swing? And that's because there's actually a few layers here, and there's a few different things that we could be talking about. But this particular thing that we're talking about is something super simple that you can start to implement right away with your game, so that you can start seeing your scores come down. Now, it's simple, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always easy, because it's a process that you have to follow. And the more that you follow it and the more consistent that you are in following it, the better off that you're going to be and the more ingrained you're going to make this routine. This is something that we see all the best players in the world doing. This is not something that I claim to have invented. There may be some terms that you've seen before. Again, I didn't invent it. I just took all this information that's available out there and I've put it together in a very structured way that if you follow it, I can guarantee you that you're going to see strokes come off your game. Now, the big thing to keep in mind here is what I'm going to teach you is the skeleton or the framework for the routine that we see all across the board. All the best players in the world are doing something like this. How you fill in the details of this routine and how you fill out the skeleton, the meat and the potatoes, if you will, on that skeleton, that is up to you. And it's up to you to continue to go through this process and refine what works for you, because the more time that you spend refining what works for you in your game, the better off you're going to be. So when you're going through it, follow the framework, fill in the details with what worked for you, and then watch the strokes start to come off. So let's go ahead and let's get after it. So let's see if I can do this here. I want to share my screen. Hopefully you guys can see that now. And I'm going to pull up the whiteboard. Awesome. Okay, so the foundation for this is something called compartmentalization. And to give you some context, compartmentalization is something that you probably already do day to day, whether you're aware of it or not. Compartmentalization is taking something and breaking it down into chunks or putting it into buckets. And you may have heard those terms before, chunking or breaking it into buckets. And the same process happens during every shot that we hit on the golf course. So let's go ahead, let's put a little title. Pre-shot routine, one of the most important and one of the most overlooked pieces of the entire golf swing. So what are we talking about here? All right, let's see if we can do this. Perfect, we should be good here. So let's break this up. These are the compartments or the buckets, if you will, that we're going to be following along with. Now there's different names and different terms for them depending on who you've heard speak about this. But basically, let's keep it simple. We have our before, during, and you guessed it, after. So there are certain things that need to happen before, during, and after each shot to successfully go through this pre-shot routine. And if we can follow this structure, I guarantee you, you're going to see the shots start to come off. So let's just pretend for a minute that we're watching some professionals play on TV. Typically, cameraman is standing there, and what happens before the shot? Well, this is the conversation that the player is having with their caddy. You see them talking, they get out the yardage book, they're having a conversation, they're figuring out which club to use. All these things start to go into it. So we want to mimic that. So let's learn a little bit about what's going on before. Well, in this before, this is where we do all of our thinking. This is using the left brain. You know what? Let's put this in quotes. Left brain. I don't want anybody to be like, well, Blaine, the science says that your left brain and your right brain. We're not getting into that. We're going to call it our left brain because it is logical. This is where we go through analysis. This is where we gather data, we gather our options, etc. Let me see. We're just going to put that all right there. I know it's clumsy. Let's see if I can make this smaller. And if not, we're just going to deal with it. Select all text. Let me make it smaller. There we go. Stop overthinking it, Blaine. Okay, so that's what's going on before the shot. Now, before we get into the details here, what happened before the shot is not what happened during the shot, because during the shot, this is no longer thinking. Instead, we are feeling the shot. This is our quote, right brain. This is where we get into our intuition and we trust our gut. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, what the routine that we're going to discuss here in a minute is going to allow us to do is be able to separate these. How do we go from thinking to feeling? And then finally, after the shot, this is a time for reflection. This is a time to learn from our mistakes and to refine the process. And this is a part of this whole routine that most people overlook. Is they may go through the before, they may go through the during, but if they're missing this after piece, well, you missed a huge step. And so let's break this down a little bit. So when we are getting ready to hit a shot, this is our before. There are 5 questions that we want to ask. These don't necessarily need to be asked in this order because they're always kind of going back and forth with each other. The first thing is, we'll just call it how far. How far? What is the distance? What is the distance to the flag? What is the distance to the front of the green, to the back of the green, to carry that bunker, to get over the water, to lay short of the water, to get over that cart path, to get around that corner, to get past that tree, you name it. Distance. That is the first thing that we need to know because it has one of the greatest impacts on the rest of the decisions that we make and the likelihood that we're going to be able to pull that shot off. Number 2, what's in between? Point A is where your ball is. Point B is where you want the ball to end up. It could be the hole. It could be a landing area. There's a whole plethora of things here. But what we want to know is what's in between point A and point B. This could be elevation. This could be that we're hitting uphill, hitting downhill. It could be that we have wind or rain or different elements like that that our ball has to travel through. This could be that we have to go over a bunker, under a tree, around a tree, anything that the ball is going to have to navigate over the distance, right? We have our distance. How far away is it? Well, what's in between where we're going and there? That is very important to understand what your ball has to navigate. Then, what is your lie? How is the ball sitting on the ground, and how well are you going to be able to make contact with that ball? Is the ball sitting up on a tee on the tee box? Is it sitting on the ground on a tee box? Is it in the fairway? Is it in the rough? Is it sitting in the sand? Is it sitting up in the sand or down in the sand? Is it on the side of a hill or is it flat? All of these determine how that ball is sitting and what's going to happen to actually hit it. Very, very important, because 150 yards in the middle of the fairway on a flat lie is much different than 150 yards where you have to go under a branch yet over a bunker on a side hill lie covered in pine straw. Totally different shot. So we have to keep those into consideration, because in the game of infinite variables, we have to be able to control or at least be aware of as many of those as we can be. Now this leads us into our next point is because of those three, we start to ask a little bit of a different question, which is, where do we need to land the ball and with what shape and trajectory so that by the time the ball finishes rolling or it releases, it ends up where we want it to. So depending on if we hit it straight, if we hit it high or low, if we fade it or if we draw it, where do we need that ball to land? Because in most shots, the ball does not finish where it hits. It could, depends on the shot. It could be that you're hitting a full wedge and you're just going to get it to stick. But you take that into consideration because, again, based on how far it is, what's in between, what the lie is, you then need to choose where do I need to land it so that it ends up near the hole. And then finally, what club are you going to use to make that happen? Now, again, these don't necessarily have to be asked in that order because maybe, depending on the shot that you're about to hit, the most important thing is like, hey, I have this branch. I need to keep the ball under the branch. Great. So we're going to choose our club, which is going to determine the trajectory and where we need to land it. Then we can navigate, well, how far is it going to go? And, you know, all these things. There's no one right way, right? So this is really important to understand. So you can fill in, and sometimes you're picking that and you're like, hey, you know, my gut tells me that this should be an 8-iron. Well, if it's an 8-iron, that's going to be a slightly different landing area compared to if it's a 7-iron. If I have to fade it with this club, that's a different landing area. I mean, all these things, again, that's the conversation that the player is having with the caddy, is they're starting to have these conversations, okay, based on the wind, based on the temperature, based on the humidity, and some of these are estimations because in competitive play, you can't have measuring devices that tell you exactly what the wind and humidity is, but these players can feel it, right? So we want to learn from that. And basically, they're just making the best decision that they can. This is all thinking, left brain logic, analysis, gather the data, figure out what your options are. The reason that we want to do this ahead of time is because when we go from here to here, we don't want to be thinking, right? Let's put it this way. In a lot of other sports, let's take baseball, for example, when a fastball is thrown at the batter, they're not thinking, they are reacting. They are feeling it out. It's their intuition. There's something that happens in a very quick split second that says, this is what you need to do and react to it to hit the ball. And it's a very feel thing. So a lot of players, when they get into the game of golf, they struggle because the ball is just sitting there. And they're like, man, I can hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, but I can't hit this ball. And the ball's just sitting there moving. And a lot of times that's because we stand over the ball and we're still in this thinking phase rather than in that intuitive feeling stage. So this is really important because if we do all of our thinking ahead of time and we answer these 5 questions, then when we actually stand over the ball getting ready to hit the shot, then we can switch into that feeling, that intuition. Now, as a side note, before we move on, it's important to note that where this happens physically is separated from where this happens. So if we watch most high-level golfers, we see that they go through their pre-shot routine and answer all those questions away from the ball, 5 feet, 10 feet behind it. Sure, if they need to take a practice swing, they might do that near the ball just to get a feel for the lie, which we'll talk about in a second. But I want you to physically separate these acts so that you can mentally and emotionally separate them. Maybe you've had this feeling before. Maybe you've stood over the ball and you start to feel out the shot. You're asking yourself all these questions. You take your practice swings right there where the ball is. Well, what's going to happen? When you're just feeling it out where you're about to hit the shot, now you've clouded your mind with the other stuff. Oh, that doesn't feel right. Oh, don't do that. Oh, that transition was too quick. Oh, you need to slow it down. All these thoughts are going through your head. And because you are physically in the place that you're about to hit the ball, there's nothing stopping you from thinking those thoughts when you actually go to swing. And if we overthink while we're getting ready to swing, we will most likely hit a bad shot. So what we really need to do is separate ourselves. Go 5 or 10 feet or 15 feet behind the ball. Look at the big picture. Look down the shot. Figure out what it needs to feel like and which club you need to hit. Then when you step up into the shot and you're now standing over that golf ball, you've separated them and you can lock onto that feeling and then execute on it. And that's where this next piece comes in, which is what happens during the shot. Now, to keep these a little bit different, I'm going to start using letters. A. So what's the first thing we need to do? And this is where it starts to blend. We need to visualize the shot. Once, and not necessarily once, I mean, it happens together. But as you start figuring these questions out, you can begin to visualize the shot. What is it going to look like? What is that trajectory going to look like? All of these questions that we ask up here are just fuel for the visualization process. And if you listen to really good ball strikers, they will tell you that they could feel what the shot would feel like, and they could see it in their mind's eye before they even hit it. So by asking these questions, we start to get the answer for the visualization. The more detailed we can be up here, and the more comfortable we feel with those answers, the more detail we will be able to visualize the shot. Everybody visualizes the shot a little bit differently, but everybody who plays at a very high level does visualize that shot. Once you've visualized that shot, now it's time to take practice swings. And I'm going to put a little asterisk right there. Why? Well, this is going to sound really controversial, but that's why we're talking about it. Practice swings are optional. I said it, guys. Practice swings are optional. Why? Well, to understand why, what is a practice swing? The purpose of a practice swing is to feel physically what you visualized mentally. ... What I mean by this is if you visualize the shot and intuitively you already have the feeling of that shot, don't go looking for it because you might just lose it. If you go to visualize the shot though and you're like, I know that's what I need to do, but I'm not quite locked on. I don't quite know what that's going to feel like. What is my tempo going to be like on that shot? What is it like to turn my hands over to hit a draw or to hold it off to hit a fade? If you need to feel it, go ahead and feel it. This is the time to do it. But like we were talking about a minute ago, the most important thing is to do your practice swings away from the ball. Unless you absolutely have to take a practice swing standing in the spot that you're about to hit the shot, do it somewhere else. Because you don't want to cloud that sacred area, the go zone, the play box, whatever you want to call it, that area right around where you're about to hit it, you don't want to cloud it with thoughts of uncertainty. Anytime that you're standing over the ball in that go zone, that play box, whatever you want to call it, when you're standing there, you want to have absolute conviction in what it is you're deciding to do. So that's a really important thing to understand, is that practice swings are optional because the purpose of a practice swing is to feel physically what you visualize mentally. Okay. Once you do have that feeling though, we want to pick an intermediary target. What is an intermediary target? Well, let's say, for example, here's the flag, and here's you. Here's something really important to understand. I'm going to change my colors up for a second. If here's a straight line between your target and your ball, when you stand behind the ball and you use your dominant eye, which is a different conversation for a different day, we'll talk about how do you discover and figure out which one is your dominant eye, but assume you know. For me, it's my left eye. Don't assume that it's you, and don't assume that you're right-handed, so it's your right eye. It's a whole different thing. But assuming you know your dominant eye, you stand behind the ball and you look straight down from your ball to your target. Now, in this example, the ball is going straight at the flag. That might not always be the case, because if I want to hit a fade, maybe I actually, because I'm a right-handed golfer, maybe I actually aim here. That's my target line, because I know by the time it ends up finishing moving, it'll be near the flag. And that goes back to number 4. Where do you land it? Okay, because maybe I need to aim there so it fades, so that it hits and releases. Again, we're not getting into the mechanics. I don't want you to have to change your swing. But a lot of people out there, 90% of golfers, hit the ball from left to right. So maybe this is something you need to keep into consideration. But let's back up for a second. The point being, here's your ball. There's your target line that you want to hit it on. When you stand straight behind the ball and you look down with your dominant eye, you see that straight line. But if you're standing over the ball, getting ready to hit a shot, now your eyes have shifted to the side. So rather than looking straight down this line, your eyes are over here looking at it from an angle. And I'm over exaggerating a little bit, but the wedge is not as severe as a driver, because a wedge you stand closer and a driver you stand farther away. My point being, this angle skews your vision. Now, you look at the flag and you think you're lined up. Maybe you hold the club against your waist and you're like, you're one of those people that you're standing over the shot, like, okay, let me just line this up and let me look down it. It doesn't work, because now you're looking sideways and you're not truly looking at your line. So my point for all this, to come back to what an intermediary target is an intermediary target, if this is our ball, is we pick something between 6 inches and 6 feet in front of us. So now when you're standing behind the ball looking down your target line, you pick out something. It could be the edge of a divot. It could be a clover. It could be preferably not something that moves. A leaf or a bug might move with the wind, or it might crawl away. So something probably permanent, a blemish in the grass, whatever it is. And we can say this. We can say, look, if I know that this point right here is just a piece of this greater line, then if I align myself to this little segment, I can assume that I'm aligned all the way to the hole. So let me say that one more time. If we can pick something 6 inches to 6 feet beyond our ball, closer to our target, on our target line, that we can use as a reference point, and we can align ourselves to that segment, then we can safely assume that we are aligned to our target. And this is where our next point comes in, which is alignment. So let me just get rid of, well, good enough, cool. That brings us to point B, alignment. So what do I mean by this? Because we just said, oh, hang on, there we go. So because we just said this, when you're standing behind the ball, looking down your target line, you can see in a straight line. When you stand off to the side, like you're about to hit a shot, you're going to be looking at an angle. We can't trust that angle to be straight. So instead, we picked our intermediary target. And because it's only 6 inches to 6 feet, when you're standing over this ball, we can pretty safely assume that we can square our body, our feet, knees, hips, and shoulders, to that segment. It's the farther away that that segment gets that it's more skewed. That's why it's only 6 inches to 6 feet. Hopefully this makes sense. If it doesn't, leave a comment, ask a question. That's what I'm here for. So now let's just assume we've aligned ourselves. Okay? After we've aligned ourselves, we confirm that everything is good to go. Very important step here. We've asked all of these questions. How far is the hole? Or how far is our target? What's in between us? What's the lie like? What's that going to do to the ball? Where do I need to land it? What club am I going to do? Great. We visualized that shot. We've practiced that shot if we needed to, so that we could feel it physically the way that we needed to, the way we visualized it mentally. We locked on to that feeling. We found a segment of our target to align ourselves to, and then we aligned ourselves to it. So the next thing is, let's just confirm that it's all good. If you have any doubt, this is the time to change it. If the wind changes and you say, oh man, maybe I should take one less club. If something in the back of your mind says, I don't feel comfortable, whatever it is, this is we'll call this point of no return. If you confirm that everything is good to go, you commit with 100% conviction. Because in the game of infinite variables, in the game of infinite shots to choose from, there's no one right or wrong. If you have more than one option in the back of your mind, you will hit a bad shot more times than not. It's how do we take this infinite number of things and dial it into just one? Whether right, wrong, or indifferent, whether you pull the shot off, does not matter. You commit to it, okay? Couple of things to think about. Henry Ford told us, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. The same thing is true here. If you have in the back of your mind, I'm going to hit into the water, I'm going to hit into the bunker, I'm going to hit into the trees, that's where you're going to hit it. And that's going to be something that we get to in a moment. Because after we confirm, the last piece is execution. You hit the shot. 100% commitment. Let's just assume I spelled that right. I can't remember if there's one T or two T's. Doesn't matter. 100%. Good enough. Spell check. Wonderful things. All right. How do I? Well, let me make this smaller. There it is. Okay. Beautiful. So let's just recap real quick. We get to our ball. How far? 150 yards. What's in between? We have to hit it over a bunker. What's the lie? The ball's slightly above my feet. Great. I'm going to hit a smooth fade 8-iron, 10 feet short left, and it's going to kick out. Great. That's the shot that I've begun to visualize. So let me visualize that shot. Let me practice it somewhere that's not where I'm going to be standing to hit the shot so that I can feel the shot that I need to. Again, if you feel like you have the shot, don't go searching for it. You then pick your intermediary target, something on a segment of the greater line that you can use as a reference point to align yourself to. Then you look up, okay, all systems go. This looks great. I'm going to commit to it, and I'm going to hit that shot. After you hit that shot, now it's over. There's nothing that you can do about the shot that you just hit. And that's one of the biggest things that we see golfers get into trouble with, is they get caught up on the result. Now, it's not that we can control the result so much as we can control just certain pieces of it. We can control the process, and we can control how we react to that shot. And this is where the after comes in, because there's only going to really be two things that happen. Either that shot is going to do what we wanted it to, or it's not. That's about it. It's my OCD right there. So if the shot does what we want it to, within reason, this is slightly subjective based on your skill level, but let's just say we went through all this process, we visualized the shot, we hit the shot, and it did what we wanted it to do. You have one option. And that option, I'll tell you what, we're going to do it this way. One option. Yay! We need to get really excited. That's a huge deal. You took this thing that didn't exist. It was just a thought in your mind. And that thought led to a series of electronical signals going from your brain to your body that caused your body to move in a certain way that got this ball to do this magical thing where you sent it hundreds of yards away to a spot that you thought it might go to. That's a huge, huge deal. You need to get excited about it. This is so, so important, because when you do that, and this leads us into this whole thing to come full circle, when you do that, you reinforce the process, and that shot goes on to a shelf in what I call your mental library. This is a shelf, and this shelf has books on it. I'm not an artist, but let's just say these are books. And let's just say this was a 150-yard 8-iron on a par 3 that you stuck to 3 feet. You better believe that the next time you have an 8-iron, the next time you have 150 yards, the next time you play that hole, whatever the conditions are, you can remember and tap into that shot. You can take that book off the shelf in your mental library, open it up and say, oh, I remember that day. If any of you watching have gotten a hole-in-one before, you can tell me everything about that shot. Every time I ask somebody about their hole-in-one, they will tell me what club they were using, they were telling me what course it was, they were telling me what day of the week it was, what the weather was like, who were they playing with, what kind of ball was it, they still have that ball, what day did their name get put in the newspaper, all these details, because that shot is so vividly ingrained in their mental library. And without a doubt, people who have gotten a hole-in-one, the next time they play that hole, or anytime they ever play that hole again, they remember that shot. But this works both ways. This is also why there are holes that you stand on the tee and you say, oh man, I always hit it into the trees, or I always hit into the bunker, or I always hit into the water. Yeah, because you've taken that shot and you've put in that shot on your mental library. Maybe green should have been good and red is bad, but whatever, it is what it is. But the point being that your mental library is full of books that maybe you don't want to read again. And we have the power to choose which books we read, which we're going to get into in a second. And this is a very powerful, powerful thing. Okay, let's erase this for a second. We're going to come back to that idea. So if the ball does what we want it to do, we need to get happy, we need to get excited so that we can get our mental library full of books that we do want to read. So we're going to call this get excited, parentheses, mental library. Now, if it doesn't, and in golf, a game of who can miss the best, chances are it's not perfect. So we have two options here. One of them, we can learn from it. Or we can forget about it and move on. Maybe you hit a shot and it was the right distance, it did what you wanted it to, it ended up in the bunker, and then you step back and like, ah, man, I was aiming there. Learn from it. It's not that the process was wrong, it's just when you got to the alignment portion, where'd it go? When you got to the alignment portion, your alignment was off, whatever. When you went to confirm it, you were pretty sure, otherwise you wouldn't have hit it, right? Just learn from it. That's it. Next time you're practicing, practice your alignment. That's all you can do. You can't change the result of the shot, you can just learn from it. And on the other side of the coin, there are going to be times where maybe you hit a great shot, it just happened to catch the cart path and it bounced out into the trees. That's not you. That's not even something that you can learn from, other than maybe next time I'll take a 3-wood instead of a driver. But it's not necessarily a technical fault. If it hits a sprinkler head, if it ends up in a divot, whatever, forget about it, move on. You can't control it. It does you no good to dwell on it. Okay. If we follow this process, and if we follow this process every single time that we hit a shot, we are going to learn from that shot. Give me one second, why won't it? All right, well, good enough. So let's move this off to the side. So there are a couple of things here that we touched on that I want to get back into because it ties this all together. The first one that we talked about is the mental library. Ooh, that was fancy. Computer doing things for me. Well, let's just say that this is a shelf. We already drew the shelf. And this time I'm going to do it right. We have good books, and we have bad books. Good shots and bad shots. Okay, so let's come back to that idea. What if I told you that there was a way that you could literally tap into your mind, open up one of these books, read it, and then hit that shot again. If you know how to control this, you can pull off the good shots. If you don't know how to control this, you may very well pull out the bad shots. Again, on a very primitive level, we have two brains. We have the new brain and the old brain. The new brain is the one that understands language. Okay? The old primitive brain does not. It only understands intuitive feelings. So if you are thinking, don't hit it in the water, your brain does not understand the word don't. All it hears is, you're thinking about the water. That must be where you want your ball to go. So that's where the ball is going to go. So we have to be able to reframe this. We can't ever think about what we don't want to happen. We can only think about what we do want to happen. What a great parallel for life. If we dwell on the bad, we will get the bad. If we focus on the good, we will get the good. Mo Norman, the greatest ball striker who's ever lived, said simply, the ball goes wherever you're focusing. Here's the thing about golf, though, and how it parallels life. You can't hide from it. You may try to fake it and say, oh, no, I'm not thinking about that water. You're thinking about that water. Okay, if I say to you watching, don't think about a green elephant. What are you now thinking about? A green elephant. Unless, and there's a trick, you say, okay, I'm not going to think about a green elephant. I'm going to think about a white elephant. I'm going to think about a pink elephant. And you override it. What do I want to focus on instead of what do I not want to focus on? Okay. So let's get into this. Like we said, there is a way that you can literally tap into with a technique called tapping. Tapping, let's just write this. Tapping, based on the science of EMDR, I'm going to butcher this. Eye movement desensitization reprogramming. Don't quote me on that. Just call it tapping. Dr. Allison Kurt, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry. I should know. And I will look it up for everybody. Anyway, tapping is super simple. Let me see if I can do this. All right, so you guys see my feet? That's it. When I'm reading a putt and I'm visualizing that ball going in the hole, I'm doing this. And it's so subtle, you might not even notice it if you're playing with me. If I'm standing behind my ball getting ready to hit my shot, as I'm visualizing it, I'm doing this. What the science behind this says is when you tap right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, instead of thinking about all the things you do not want the ball to do or whatever you're trying to think about, you override it. So the key is that you are visualizing what you do want to happen. And while you're doing that, you're literally tapping, and it hones in on that focus like a laser beam. And the more focused you can get that laser beam, the less distraction you have out here. So now the water goes away, the trees go away, that bunker goes away, and instead you're only thinking about what you do want to happen. Super powerful. What's cool about this is, let's say you have that par 3, you hit an 8-iron, you got a hole-in-one, you remember that shot. I guarantee you the next time you play that hole, if you pull out your 8-iron and you think about that shot and you visualize it and you feel it and you tap into it, you will probably hit a good shot. But on those other holes where you're like, man, I always hit it into the trees. I always slice this one into the road. Oh man, one time I played this, I broke a car's windshield. Yeah, that's going to be in the back of your mind. And if that's what you're focusing on, even if you're tapping, you're going to get more. You're just laser beaming in on breaking that windshield. That's probably what's going to happen. You're going to hit a bad shot. So it's not that tapping will guarantee a good shot. No, tapping allows you to laser beam focus on whatever it is you're visualizing. So how do we clear the headspace to focus on and visualize the shot that we do want to happen. Well, that I like to use breath work. I'm a big fan of breath work and what it is able to do for us in our performance. There's different kinds of breath work, but the one that I teach most of my golfers very early on is a technique called square breathing. You may have also heard this referred to as box breathing. There's, again, a lot of different breathwork techniques out there, but here's the reason why I like this one. Because in the morning, when you wake up, you can do sessions of square breathing breath work to train your mind how to focus and be aware and meditate in such a way that when you're on the golf course, you can go through just one cycle of square breathing and you're locked in on it. So this is where if you're sitting over a shot and it's a tricky shot and you have all this anxiety, oh man, I hit that car last time, or I always slice it out, you just, and now you're in the zone. At first, it might take longer than that, but you can eventually get to the point where just in one breath cycle or two breath cycles, you can get that laser focus. When you have that laser focus on what you do want, and you can lock onto it and then tap into it and follow this process, you see where we're going. So what is square breathing? Well, let's draw a box. And the magic number here is 4. What we're going to do, let's make this a little bit cleaner. I'll do some text. We're going to inhale through the nose for 4 seconds. Mind you, when we breathe, we want it to be a belly breath, a diaphragmatic breath. You can still breathe in through your nose and breathe in through your belly. Different video for a different time. We're then going to hold that breath for 4 seconds. Exhale fully and completely through your mouth for 4 seconds. And then with nothing left, you hold it for 4 seconds. So we go through this cycle as many times as we need to. If we're doing a meditative practice, say in the morning, I like to recommend at least 3 to 5 minutes. It's really not that many breath cycles, since the breath cycle takes about 16 seconds. You get about 4 of those in a minute. Do the math, it's not that much. This is something you can do when you're driving. You can do it when you're working. You can do it when you're on the golf course. You can do it when you're studying. Doesn't matter, and nobody really knows that you're doing it. And just like that, I'm calm, I'm relaxed, I'm focused. I can control what's going on up here so that I don't have to think about the shot that goes in the water. I can think about the one that goes on the green. I can tap into it, and then I can hit it. So let's come full circle here. First thing, we get to our ball. We start asking these questions. How far away is it? What's in between? What's my lie? Where do I want to land it, and what club do I want to use? We begin to visualize the shot. We do our breath work and our tapping to tap into the shot that we do want to hit instead of focusing on the shot that we don't want to hit. We take practice swings as needed to feel the shot before we hit it. Once we've locked onto what that shot is supposed to feel like, we pick an intermediary target or a reference point, whatever you want to call it. We align ourselves to that intermediary point. We confirm that it all looks good, that we've picked the right club, we've picked the right shot shape, all based on our abilities, etc. We hit it with 100% commitment. Afterwards, we either get incredibly excited. We don't have to show it outward, but inward, you need to reward yourself. And you say, wow, here's this thing that was just a figment of my imagination, a series of electrical impulses. I got my body to do this amazing thing and the ball reacted to it. That's the beauty of golf. You need to get excited about that. If it doesn't do it, you need to learn from it. Was it the wrong club? Was it the wrong shot? Was it the wrong alignment? Do you need to work on your game? Whatever it is. If you have a big slice, whatever, just play the big slice. Don't try to fix it in the middle of the round. That's what practice time is for. But when you're playing, just follow this process. The process will get you better shots. I guarantee it. Either that or you need to just forget about it and you just need to move on. Okay. If you want to go into more detail about this routine, I encourage you to visit book.mobilitatathletics.com. At book.mobilitatathletics.com, you can get a free copy of my book, Better Golf from the Inside Out. In that book, I talk about this process plus more, way more. So that's at book.mobilitatathletics.com. If you like this video and you want to see more of this video, please share this video, ask questions, get engaged, join my group at facebook.com/groups/Mobilitas Movers. It's my free community. Chances are, if you're watching this right now, you're already a part of it. But in case I put, wow, come on. In case I post this somewhere else, what is going on here? One more time. We got it. Like I was saying, if you're watching this now, chances are you're already a part of that group. If not, because I posted this video somewhere else, whatever, come check it out. Come get in it. I do a lot of things like this. As always, your questions go a long way. The more questions you guys have, the more I know what you want to know about, and I'll make more content for it. It's that simple. If you guys want to work together, have individualized, personalized attention, and a program guaranteed to get you where you want to go, reach out. I'll let you know what that's all about. We'll have a conversation, and we'll find the right program for you. Please share this. If you know somebody that this is going to help them. Last thing. Let me just put this up here, tapping. Just in case anybody's watching this, like, I don't remember what that was, tapping. Or it's just my OCD, the mental library. Okay, let's sum it up one more time. We get to the ball. This is before we hit the shot. How far away is it? How far to the green? How far to the front, the back, the hole? How far to carry the bunker? How far to lay short of the bunker? How far to reach the water? How far to get around that corner? How far to get it over the cart path? That's your distance. What's in between you and where you're going? Do you have to go over a bunker? Do you have to go over water? Do you have to go through wind? Do you have elevation changes? What's your lie? Is the ball sitting up or down? Is it on grass? Is it on sand? Is it semi-underwater? All these things go into how cleanly you're going to be able to hit it and what the ball does once you do hit it. Once you do hit it, where do you need the ball to land so that by the time it finishes rolling, ends up where you want it to, and which club is going to bring it all together and make that happen? And all those questions can be flip-flopped around. There's no one particular way that they need to happen. As you answer all those questions, begin to visualize the shot. The purpose of your visualization, and the more clearly you can answer those first 5 questions, the more laser focused that you can be. But remember, we don't want to think about the bad shots. So when we're visualizing that shot, you want to breathe and tap into what you do want. So use those techniques and use them liberally. When you are taking your practice swings, you are doing them in a place that is not where you're about to hit the ball unless you have to, unless it's a really weird lie that you just need to figure it out and feel the grass. But otherwise, separate yourself physically and mentally from it. You'll be better off for doing so. But remember, the purpose of a practice swing is to feel the shot physically the way that you visualized it mentally. If you already have that feeling, don't go searching for it. Once you do have that feeling, lock in onto it. Pick your intermediary target, that reference point to make sure that you're lined up the right way. Align yourself to it. Confirm it all looks good. Execute on that shot. If it does what you want it to, reward yourself. Get incredibly excited. If it doesn't, learn from it or forget about it and move on. If you guys want to learn more, download my book, Better Golf from the Inside Out, at book.mobilitatathletics.com. Join my community on Facebook, the Mobilitas Movers group. And if you want to work together one-on-one, reach out. I'd love to have you. If you've gotten this far, there's something special there, and I want to have you I want to see you be successful. Okay? Get out. Go play better golf. Talk to you guys soon.